They have a vested interest in not being replaced by this cool thing called Nplan, and here you come along with all this AI, so what should they think about it?
They should be absolutely petrified that their livelihood is about to come to an end.
Okay, so summer's here. Let's do a bit of home DIY. Should only take a couple of weeks, but by the end of it, 2 months. Now, if it's just a bathroom, no worries, but if the project's $1 billion railway, big problems. One thing, as we know, as humans, we aren't great at figuring out how long something's going to take. Today's guest on Founders and Builders, Amratia, was working on massive infrastructure projects and saw literally millions of dollars flushed down the drain. And so he founded Nplan. Skyscrapers, hospitals, bridges. Nplan's AI has been trained on over 750,000 construction projects and is backed by Google Ventures. Probably the coolest thing that I found about Nplan is that their AI assistant is actually called Barry. So if Anthropic has Claude, then for construction, of course it has to be called Barry. I just thought, fantastic.
This technology will completely change our economy, society, and every industry we can think of.
So I hope you enjoy this episode. This is Founders and Builders. Now let's get into it. So everything around us in the built environment has either been a project that perhaps once failed or a timeline that's stretched. Even with experts behind the project, even for projects that are funded billions of pounds or dollars, why does that happen?
It's just hard. Let me tell you why it's hard. When you say, or when we know projects are delayed, they're delayed against a timeline. That timeline has to be created by women and men like us. We sit in a room, perhaps one that might look like this, and we have to plan the project. Every little component. There could be 10,000 little things that have to happen, from digging a hole to pouring a bit of concrete in it. 10,000 of those or more things have to happen in perfect sequence, in perfect order. Just imagine how hard it is to figure out exactly how long each one of those 10,000 things will take. I don't even know how long it's going to take me to cycle home this evening. Could be between here and here, right? Between ranges. So the problem is of twofold. One, it's complex. 10,000 things is a lot of things to think about. And two, it is nearly impossible to get perfect, right? You're trying to set a single point in the future with absolute certainty as to how that will turn out. So you then end up with this like rippling effect, where if you get 5% wrong, which would be perfectly normal and human for to happen, the effect of 5% wrong is 40, 80, 100% delays on the other side.
And you experienced this firsthand when you were working at Shell.
Yeah, a potentially painful memory to relive. But yes, I have been on the pointy end of trying to get these large projects done in the energy industry, where the projects are as complex and as jaw-dropping as they get. I've been on that side where I felt the pain of how hard it is to figure out what could go wrong next and try, as part of the management team, to be proactive about managing our risk. Everyone talks about you need to be ahead of the risk, not behind the risk, right? Well, in order to get ahead of it, I have to know what it is going to be. And we were just guessing. No matter how much money we threw at the problem, and believe me, the energy industry has the capability to throw money at problems, you just can't figure it out. And the reason my team, the industry, the whole world, mankind is limited in this is because of the little gray matter that we have up here. The gray matter we have up here has these 3 components to it that, when it's working, will hinder us. The first is availability. You only know what you know, and I only know what I know. And we, the team trying to deliver said energy project, only knows what it knows. It doesn't know what the whole world knows, right? Part 1, availability. Part 2, optimism. 95% of humanity believes it is not affected by optimism. All project teams go through this. I always thought that my team was the best project team that would ever get to execute a project. Statistically impossible, of course. And the third is my favorite, is salience. So right now, we're sitting together here having a coffee. Hopefully we're not paying too much attention to that air conditioner that's making noise over there. Hopefully the listeners can't hear it either. That is the ability for the human brain to ignore what it perceives to be noise. So bring that onto a construction project. We both live in London.
Mhm.
We both hopefully love the Elizabeth line, what used to be known
Love
as
the Elizabeth.
Crossrail. Crossrail was once a giant tunnel boring project, a giant tunnel going across London. And everyone was paying attention to the tunnel boring machine, these massive machines digging a massive hole through London. It's just cool. Like, I'm an engineer and I just love getting out of bed for those sorts of things. Nobody was thinking about how do we get the certificates for the system tests to be completed on time. It's just noise in our brains. So we ignore it. And then what caused Crossrail's delay? It wasn't the tunnel boring machine, I can promise you that. It was those integration tests, the small details, the paperwork that had to happen in order to create an operating railway. Those three things, availability, optimism, and salience, is why we struggle so hard to get this done. I face these problems, and many of the people that are trying their level best out there in the field face these problems.
So take us back to that moment where before you started Nplan, you realized there were these three fundamental flaws in how we not just forecast construction projects, but how we forecast anything as people. What then led to you starting Nplan?
I spent about a decade with Shell trying to manage these projects. It was really hard, very stressful role that had massive impacts onto the bottom line of the company. I then moved into a government role where I worked in the centre of government and I wrote the UK's national strategy on artificial intelligence. It was a bit of a left field turn working for the Prime Minister to launch that strategy paper in 2017. Theresa May was Prime Minister. That was my chance to kind of like lift myself up and see how powerful technology could be, specifically AI. In 2016 and 2017, it was far less in vogue than it is right now. So I was a bit lonely in the voice that's saying that this technology will completely change our economy, society, and every industry we can think of. It will change. And then following that, it was like I came out as this evangelist, and I saw how hard the problems are in delivering large projects. Nplan just made sense as the next step for me, right? Like, take what you believe in and take the problems you've seen and put those two things together and find a solution for some of the deepest, darkest problems that will change the world.
And can I ask, what did you see that nobody else or few other people saw in your circles that gave you this conviction in AI?
Everyone was kind of like really narrowly focused on how AI can play chess or how it can tell that this is a dog and this is a cat and that this handwritten note is actually this text, right? And that was kind of the limit of it at the time in 2016. What I saw was this is a system that has an unlimited potential to learn patterns at a scale that no one can ever reach. And it's this like pattern learning skill, this pattern recognition skill, which sure, you could call an image a pattern, right? That is true. But nearly everything in the world is a pattern. Like how I build construction projects is a pattern. Like how mankind builds construction projects is a pattern. Codifying that is the hard part, right? And so if you take the truth that these machines and these algorithms are superior at pattern recognition than any mankind, which is also true, by the way, in large language models, they're just detecting patterns in language.
Kind of predicting the next word in the sequence.
Correct, right? And just done at a scale that everyone couldn't fathom before. Like, it's the same in our world at Nplan. We're doing it at a scale that no one in 2016 or 17 was like, there's no way you'll ever get to that kind of volume scale. The world will never coalesce around it. And then fast forward to 2025, of course, that is now not true, right? We have coalesced, as proven by many other impressive AI companies in the world today.
And as far as I'm aware, the kind of business that you've built around Nplan now very much builds on the conviction that you had early of the kind of products you want to build to solve the kind of problems that you saw. Where did you start? You saw the potential of AI. You'd experienced firsthand these problems in construction. What did the first 100 days look like?
The first 100 days were interviews. We were just trying to meet people that were facing the problem to become our allies. So we knew there was no way. Alan Mosca is my co-founder, the CTO of Nplan, the brains behind Nplan. He and I knew there was no way we would ever be able to get this thing off the ground unless we had allies in the industry. So what we did was, this is going to sound cliche, but we read a book, and the book was called The Mum Test, written by a brilliant man called Rob Fitzpatrick. I call it a toilet seat book because you could read it off a toilet seat and not have your legs go numb. It's brief and simple and easy to digest. And we followed the principles of the book, which is basically go find out what the problems are. Your ideas are worthless. The only thing you seek are insights. And in the first 100 days, I believe we talked to just over 200 people in the industry, from the chief executive of Crossrail all the way to foremen trying to do welding jobs, right? Like the whole range came through that. We kept asking the same question. What's the difficult problem in getting projects done on time? What would you like to have it solved, no matter how you think the realm of possibility would be? And what we converged on was, everyone said, if I had unlimited experience, this would be way easier. But there's no way I can get unlimited experience. That's impossible. I'm like, okay, well, that's my job now. Let me go off and figure out how to make that a reality.
What did they mean when they said unlimited experience? Just like
The experience of the whole world.
Got it.
Like if I knew how every other project in the whole world executed, and I knew exactly what decision to take when faced with it, I would be millions of times better at doing my work here in this project. I would be able
back to your point around patterns, a lot of these construction projects are derivatives of something that's happened before.
Correct. Yeah. When we went through that, when I say we were seeking allies, we also needed data. There was a transaction that had to occur as well. We were looking for money. We asked for data. We asked people that we were talking to, okay, if we could learn how other projects worked and give this information to you, would you value that? He said, yeah, of course, we'd massively value that. We started hearing we'd be willing to pay millions for something like that. We're like, oh, okay, interesting. Write that down. But at the time, the only ask was, if you think this is so valuable to have solved, will you please help us by sharing data on previous projects that have executed? Not the current sensitive things. Just show us that data that is sitting in that archive server over there that no one even cares about. Send that to us, and we'll try and build this magic machine for you. And if we can't, it was nice trying. You've not lost anything. You tried to solve a problem. We'll all be proud that we tried.
You mentioned The Mom Test by Rob was such a fundamental book to shape how you approach those first 100 days. What was it about the book?
The simplicity of it. I don't have a big brain, so I can't remember much. And so, I've read many startup books, the Ben Horowitz books, the Lean Startup. I don't really remember much of those books. But the Mum Test just taught me one thing, which was the only thing you really need to care about is what someone else's problems are, right? The mum, like my mum, your mum, really cares about what your problems are. If they come back from school and you're like, oh, looking down, it's like, Joe, you look a little down today. What's going on? Why are you down? Like, why? She means asking why. We sometimes get annoyed with that, but really they're doing it from a position of care. So you have to begin to care, like your mum cares about you, care about that person's problem, and just have this infatuation to solve their problems. That's part one. And part two is, remember, your ideas are worthless. Never push your idea onto someone else. You are seeking an insight from them to you. That way, not that way. And that's the currency you're trying to gain. So just two principles. And I think just those two things alone is good enough to ideate nearly anything in the world.
To get this validation, how did you set up those conversations, those meetings with the people right at the front line, the CEOs of the companies that you maybe wanted to sell to and bill for? How did you reach out to them?
There was thousands of LinkedIn messages going out. Probably the success rate of that was, I don't know, sub 2%. So some of that was just a hard grind. If someone begins to resonate with the energy and passion that we're bringing to the table, that I really care about solving your problem, I'm not trying to make a quick buck out of this. I'm genuinely care about you. I care about solving your problem for you. They will help you. They will. Like if your care is genuine, like your mom does have genuine care for you, that person will do something for you. And in that case, it was, I think you should also go and meet my friend, the CEO of Crossrail, right? And that's how that happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, one of the previous guests that came on the show, he talked about playing the infinite game with people, right? Rather than looking at every interaction as like a transaction, what can I give to get? People can feel that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I would never advocate that at all. Yeah, the care part is actually one of those things that has stuck with Alan and I throughout. One of the 3 values of the company at Nplan today is radical truthfulness, which is a spin on Radical Candor by Kim Scott. The underlying of it is just care about the other person, right? Like, to be truthful to someone, you could be obnoxious by being truthful, or you could do it from a position of care. Like, I really care about you, so I'm going to tell you something that might be a little hard for you to hear, but I'm doing it because I care about you. What it started off in the first 100 days is like, I really care about solving this problem for other people. I face this problem myself, and I just feel for you. It's so hard being out there. You're in a thankless job, frankly, is completely undervalued and is impossible. So I care about solving your problem for you. And then just make sure that that transcends into the company as well, right? Like, we as a company care about not just our customers' problem or the industry's problem, but we also care about each other and building this into building this solution.
And for somebody that isn't from a construction or an AI background, I'll give you a challenge now, if that's all right, Dev. How would you explain, let's say, to a 10-year-old using just Lego bricks as your material? How would you explain what Nplan does?
Using Lego bricks?
Yep.
Okay, so 10-year-old, how do I explain Nplan to you? Imagine you've got a bag of Lego, and it's a random bag, and you throw all the pieces on the ground. You have to now figure out how to draw the book, the instruction book. There was no instruction book that came with the bag. You just got a bag of Lego. But now you have to build something. Your friend comes in and tells you, we're building a train. And you're looking at all these random pieces, 10,000 of them sitting on the floor in your bedroom. And you have to figure out how to make that happen. Your job is to figure out, to draw the book, to write out the book, the instruction manual, so you can build the train set.
All I see now is pieces. It looks like chaos.
It's absolute chaos. No one knows where the hell to start.
Yeah.
So what Nplan will do for you is it look at all these pieces and say, I've seen other people build these pieces together in these ways. I would recommend this is how you build it. Thank you for giving me that advice, right? At the end of the day, you're the master builder. Nplan is not going to build it for you. You're the builder. You still decide that you want a red brick to go in the front of the train. Even though Nplan might have said it should be a yellow brick, you want the red brick to go in front. You decide that, your choice. And all Nplan will do is say, if you put that red brick there, that this is the consequence you might face later on, right? There may be, you won't have enough red bricks later on for the last carriage. That's Nplan's job, to give you that advice, to say, I've seen these things happen before. I've seen other kids try to build Lego trains before with these types of Lego bricks. This is what happens. Your choice. Would you like to follow it in this way?
So I'll step into my 10-year-old self. Already this sounds awesome, because I had this problem of staring at a bag of probably 10,000 Lego bricks and no idea how to build a train. But many people, let's say my other 10-year-old friends, have made careers out of helping me write these instructions. They have a vested interest in not being replaced by this cool thing called Nplan. And here you come along with all this AI. So what should they think about it?
They should be very scared. They should be absolutely petrified that their 10-year-old livelihood is about to come to an end.
Yeah.
Right? Or maybe less draconian would say their position is no longer to be that analyst that does the analysis on how to build a Lego, because they're just kind of crap, right? The best they have is like limited experience, limited views of the world. They're kind of slow, right? Nplan works like that. But what are they good at? Like, think, what is a human to human interaction still good at doing? It is good at for example, AI is not good at putting other humans at ease. right? Actually, the most effective way of doing that is with another human being, a hug. Uh, um, so the role of these advisors, shall we say, is no longer in analysis. Their role is to help people go through change, to coach them, to be their support crew, right? Rather than I'm going to tell you how to do something, even though I don't know how to do it myself.
Super quick one from me. As you know, every week I ask our listeners what is one tool they couldn't live without, and I'm super happy that this week it is a tool that I've used and loved for a while now, and it's Granola. Granola is like the Ferrari of AI meeting agents. You simply just add it to your desktop or your browser, and it sits there listening to your meeting, transcribes without you having to do anything, and then gives you these perfectly polished notes. And I have no idea how Chris and the team are doing it with the model on the back end, but every note is like super specific to exactly what I care about, but it misses all of the fluff, which is a massive problem that I've had trying like literally 5 other products. So if you're interested in using Granola, check out the link in description below. And for now, let's get back into the episode. Let's zoom out a bit and look at the scale of the problem that Nplan is talking about solving, right? One of the quotes that I love about, from Steve Jobs is that he basically says, there's 2 ways of looking at life. Either you can feel dropped into life and you can be reacting to what's already there, and you can be a player in a game that's already preset, a world that already exists. Or you can look at everything and realize that people built this that were no smarter than you. Everything around us has been created by humans since we landed here. So my question is, what do you think the biggest impact that AI will have over the next 10 years will be that we haven't seen previously, rather than just replacing and upskilling people that previously were doing this kind of like boring analysis?
Yeah. So I'm sure people have heard over and over and over things like, we'll stop doing boring jobs, we'll be elevated in our roles. I'm not going to repeat any of those things. I'll take a different spin that has nothing to do with people and people work. My take is actually on how money flows in the market, particularly into the built environment. Allow me to explore this with a story. When I was at Shell, I was working on a project called the Martinez Greenhouse Gas Reduction Project. It was a refinery in Martinez, California, that had the potential to reduce its greenhouse gas effects into the atmosphere. Shell would need to spend just over $1 billion in order to make that investment happen. Noble cause, right? But $1 billion isn't exactly small change.
Even for Shell.
Even for Shell. Ultimately, Shell's executive committee, who had to make the decision as to whether they should spend that money or not, failed to make the decision because of the uncertainty in the deployment of that capital. What that meant is that I, as the diligent project manager, said, here it is, we'll get it done in 2 years and it'll cost $1 billion. Could I have $1 billion, please, in 2 years to finish this? And they looked at it and be like, I don't know if it's actually going to be $1 billion. I think it's more like 1.5 billion and 4 years. I can't blame them for thinking that. And if those were the economics, then all of a sudden now this project is like, no. And I was like, no, I promise it's $1 billion in 2 years. I promise. But of course, I couldn't actually promise that. Basically, in that transaction, there was too much uncertainty. So they failed to decide. That is, by the way, not a sole example. In the UK, the A303 under the Stonehenge project, right, has been constantly start, stop. And the reason it's on a start-stop is uncertainty. High-Speed 2, Phase 2, currently in stop, right? Because of the uncertainty of its final outcome. So what I think will be meaningfully different in the world is that uncertainty band will drop, because you no longer have humans with those 3 biases creating these bogus forecasts of the outcome. You have an independent algorithm capable of analyzing billions and billions of data points, far beyond the human brain's capability, now making the judgments as to where the future potential will be, or future outcome will look like, in a systematic, believable, traceable method that you can rely on. So if Nplan says, or these AI systems that can forecast say, this is where the project is headed towards, you can trust it. Your uncertainty is dramatically reduced. As uncertainty drops, the amount of capital that flows in this space will increase. The amount of bankable projects, as bankers would say, will shoot up.
What do they mean by bankable projects?
A project where the amount of uncertainty is quantifiable and you can put it onto the ROI calculator and you come out with, we would make money doing this. Right? Even the treasury has to do this for public projects. They have to know that it will be productive for the economy to do something. The biggest nemesis they're facing is the uncertainty of it. So if you drop that uncertainty, just the sheer volume of projects that can be invested in will increase. And as time passes, that's the effect that will change the world we live in. The fact that we are now able to make the decision. By the way, it's okay to say, no, we're not going to do that project. But what's not okay, what is deeply frustrating from a global capital perspective, is when you fail to decide.
Right.
I just can't decide it's a yes or a no. That is by far the least productive, least efficient thing to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just think about that. Failing to decide something is always the worst thing you could possibly do.
And if you think about the impact of this, not just for, let's say, building skyscrapers in London or New York, but we're talking about like critical infrastructure that underpins a country, an economy, a body of people.
Right now, I'm sure you know, like electricity consumption is skyrocketing in most countries in the world. The grids, like the thing that carries electricity from A to B, we're not changing the grid very fast. So in order to decide to upgrade our grids in the US, in the UK, in Europe, in China, and China doesn't have the problem as badly as we do. They decide things fairly easily there. But for the rest of us, mere mortals, if we don't decide now, we're screwed. We will literally have blackouts in this country because the grid system cannot carry enough electricity to supply the endpoints that we have. Like, just imagine the consequences of failing to decide. And then I haven't even started on the effects of greenhouse gases, the carbon reduction projects that we have to execute as a planet. All of these projects are contingent on us making a decision today.
Yep. Failing to choose is itself a choice.
And it's a scary one, right? And I don't blame the people that struggle to choose today.
And so we've had forecasting and the ability to predict in, weather, let's say, or I'm Amazon and I'm trying to forecast how much inventory I should hold of toothbrushes for people buying in London. Why has this not come to construction before Nplan?
It was perceived to be a data problem. When we started Nplan, when Al and I started Nplan, the number one, but it's never going to work reason was the data is crap. No one will share the data. To the no one will share data, fast forward to today, turns out people do share the data if the problem is worth solving, right? We know this through financial services. Everyone said the banks will never share transaction data. Turns out they do. And they do it because there's a tremendous economic reason to do so. So in the construction industry, this perception that no one will share it turned out to be false, or wrong, thankfully. Today, Nplan processes data from 800,000 projects in the world, $2.5 trillion of capital that has been deployed in the world. So it's a large part of the data that makes up the construction market. Data is crap, not good quality. This one is hard. It is true that these data points are not always good quality, but what one person perceives to be bad quality, another, i.e. an algorithm, is capable of solving for. What I mean by that is, I'll give you a simple example that happens in the type of data that we're processing. I'm building a house, so I've built the schedule, the Gantt chart for the house, and I say, we're going to build the roof before we build the walls. That is obviously an error.
I used to try that on Sims.
Yeah, those houses don't last very long.
Yeah, it never worked.
And in the same way, just like we both reacted like, that's a silly way of building a house, algorithms can also do that, right? So if the input data says roof goes in before walls, algorithms will look at it and be like, not really. I know you're not.
Are you sure about that?
I know you're not doing it that way, really, right? And will correct. Just like autocorrect lives in Word, right? So at scale, and these problems can only solve once you reach scale, right? So if enough people are sharing the data, then the quality problems can get solved. But it was these perceptions that have stopped it from starting. It was never a systemic reason. It was always a perception problem.
Mm-hmm. We've talked about the space of construction and the kind of world that Nplan was built in. We've talked about what you saw when it came to the power of AI early at the time. Was this 2017?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd love to delve into a bit more about how you've gone about building the company. Because my belief, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is that building a company is, reduced to its most basic principles, two things. One is the decisions you make, and one is your ability to execute on those decisions. When rubber hits the road, how do they become in reality? So let's talk about the decisions that you made while building Nplan. What are the, would you say, 10% of decisions that you made that drove 90% of the value?
There are different ones at different moments in time. So I'll pick three different kind of key milestones in our life, in our journey. The first one was stick with the problem. Just stick with it because it's worth solving. That was like flying in our face in 2019 when we had no technical traction. Our models were not working. We had, raised 2.8 million pounds in seed money. Which at the time in 2018 was considered, a large seed round. Today, obviously, it's completely dwarfed. But back then it was like, wow, you raised a lot of money. You better make sure this thing works now. So just do something that works was the pressure coming in. And the decision to know what we're doing, which is the ability to learn from these data points to build a predictive system that can forecast the outcome, that can tell someone how to improve their project, is worth it.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't know how long it's going to actually take to get that. But this kind of point one, persevere.
Mm-hmm.
We made the decision that we would rather die, kill Nplan, trying to solve that problem than switch.
And what gave you that conviction, that faith?
Just those first 100 days. Right? And repeatedly hearing it even after that, like, oh my God, if you were ever able to solve this, that would be insane. That would change everything. And these people were not just saying it to end the meeting. They were saying it out of genuine passion. And when someone has that passion, you can feel it. It's not, when something is genuine, right? So it's it was so clear that if solvable, it was massive. So it's well, if that's true, or not, there was therefore no doubt on whether solving it would be worth it or not. And if something is worthwhile, you go after it.
Yeah, VCs might call this market risk. No market risk, but a lot of execution risk. Was it even possible?
Technical risk. That was the first one, persevere. Second one, we made a decision that the product of Nplan has to become self-sufficient. So that is linked to a bad decision we made, which is maybe the way to get ourselves to earn money sooner is by having a middle layer between the product and the customer, which is a services layer. Because our customers are used to buying professional services from consultants. So it's let's just start Nplan professional services. And so it sits as a middle layer. That was the bad decision. And therefore the good decision was that's a bad decision. And let's not have that. So just remove that entire organization from Nplan. An incredibly painful decision to take. And we were really unsure as to whether we would keep customers, right? Because customers are now used to having people they could talk to from Nplan. They were not used to using our product. And our product was actually kind of crap back then because the product team had no idea who the customer was, which, lesson one on how to build a product is get your product team to talk to the customer, right?
Just on that, I'd love to go a bit further into this because I think many SaaS companies that operate with customers that live in the physical world are facing this exact same thing, right? Customers that are used to buying from people, working with people. What gave you the insight that actually we need to reverse this decision and not have this service layer between our product and our customers?
It was that our product was kind of crap. The software product was kind of crap, right? The customer was only saying, I was like, oh, I love working with Joe and Dev. They're just great people. I'm like, I don't think that's the idea. I'm glad you think Joe's nice, but that's not really what you're supposed to be saying at this point. You should be saying, I really love the product. So yeah, I mean, the product, our software product was kind of crap. In 2020, 2021, 22, it was still crap, right? And it was crap because our product team were not exposed to the customer. It was so clear why. I would talk to my product team and it would be completely oblivious as to what they needed to build and why. Instead, it was, we'll build tools for our professional services team to play with. And it was like, no, man, we're not. And so it's this like realization that if we ever want to have the kind of impact we dream of having, or that this technology has the potential of having, we will get hamstrung by our professional services arm. There's no way we can scale this to get the impact we need. It's impossible. So if you want scale, you have to make the decision to invest into your software product, because that is the only mechanism available to get to that point of scale.
So that was decision number one that caused, let's say, 10% of the good decisions that drove 90% of the value. What else springs to mind when you think about early bets that you made?
We made another early bet on which target segments to focus on. Like where construction is $5 trillion industry, do you go after $5 trillion at once or not? Right? Do you focus yourself? Noting that the data, that we started this like very hungry data gathering problem on our hands, and still do, right? We'll always have that with us. So we took a bet on public infrastructure. The bet was hard because everyone said, ooh, getting public infrastructure, public procurement can kill you, right? There's so many startups that die trying to sell into the NHS, for example.
Totally.
And we're like, actually, no, this is where it matters. This is the part of the world, part of the economy where it really goes wrong a lot. And it matters. And these people need the most help. We heard it in the voices of people as well. But when you're flying in the face of, I also need to make money and revenue and have that flow through relatively quickly, right? I can't wait for 3 years to get some revenue through the door. That was a hard decision to take. But in hindsight, those same customers today sign 8-year non-cancelable contracts with us. They are completely reliant on our systems today. That kind of revenue quality is incredibly rare for most startups to get, right? But it's down to that decision that we're going to pick the segment that cares the most, has the biggest problem in it, and focus on them and not go after the whole world. Just because you think you might want to use Nplan doesn't mean we're going to work with you. We'll focus.
Yeah, almost flies in the face of like conventional, I would say, VC wisdom, at least that I've heard, which is like build the most basic form of your product, sell it 1 million times. That is validation. And then based on that, you can then build the real product.
Yeah, we've just raised a Series B and we did it with 18 customers. That's it. We're not selling it to millions of people. I believe that the right way to go through this is to build as much value as possible and get your customers to go head over heels about what the product is capable of doing. And then think about how you take that across tens of hundreds, right? So the analogy that I heard VCs use with us, I'll give them credit for this one, is that Nplan is closer to Palantir for construction than insert yet another SaaS company here for construction. And Palantir for a long time was not considered a good company. Most of the market beat the hell out of Palantir for its business model. Turns out that was wrong. And if you had invested in Palantir 4 years ago, you'd be very, very wealthy by now.
Yeah. What is your summary on the market expectation versus reality? Was it just that they were mispricing what was actually happening in building the foundations of the company?
The market expectation was that software as a service is the prime model to be high margin, high value, and have high growth, right? Which is not a bad assumption. There's tons of data points that prove it. And what Palantir showed is that there's another way of doing that. The other way of doing that is you go into a customer, work with them at low margins initially, but get so deep into that customer's environment and become so integral to their operation that A, the customer has no choice but to continue using that service, and B, the service is so valuable that you are completely price dominant at that point, right? If for example, and there are these stories that are available, like how Palantir how much would the U.S. Department of Defense pay someone for finding out where Osama bin Laden was hiding? That number is obviously hundreds and hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars for that insight. And if you are capable of generating that insight, that level of value inside an organization, where your value is not just the workflow, but the insight being generated in the organization, your ability to price for that insight is completely elastic. Like you can scale that up to almost infinity. Not infinity, of course, but like the scale up level of that price point is massive. And even then, we now know this today, because thankfully to the S1 documents of Palantir, what price points they're capable of charging for their insights. And it's in line with how much would you pay to find out where Osama bin Laden is hiding, right? And not to continue the parallel to Palantir, but in our world, our customers are willing to pay a huge amount of money to find out where the delay might come from so that they can do something about it. Like the saving, there's not a single project in the world where our saving is not at least $100 million. Doesn't exist. Nowhere. So if you extrapolate that, like if that's the minimum kind of quantums that we're putting out across all of the projects that we work on, granted most of the projects we work on are $1 billion or more, but nonetheless, $100 million is not a rounding error. What is our ability to charge for that, right? And all of a sudden, you've introduced a whole different way of creating commercial value at scale that flies in the face of sell a $10,000 license to 10,000 companies, right? Which there's nothing wrong with that. But this is just very orthogonal to that and has, in many cases, a superior margin to 10,000 licenses to 10,000 companies.
Yeah. This is actually a topic on pricing that this is the first time it's come up on the Founders and Builders podcast. So how do you go about pricing for a product where the impact that you have as you become stickier within the customer only grows over time and you become a key part of their workflow?
Impossible question, or impossible to answer question, because I don't know. I'll tell you how we think about it right now. And I think everything I'm about to say will be wrong in a year. So the way we think about it right now is we'll start with the propensity to create value, which is fancy words for saying the bigger your project, the more likely we are to help you, and that more likely we are to create value for you. So you pay in line with value generation, right? So value discount pricing is a simple way of saying that. So the bigger the project, the larger the fee becomes on the Nplan side. And most customers can see that. Nobody objects to that, because also that's how consultants would do it, right? The bigger your project, the more people we're going to send you, therefore the higher our fee is going to be. We're also just cheaper than consultants to start with, right? A consultant line item will be tens of millions and we'll fly just underneath that. So as long as we're cheaper, the argument becomes harder to make. But I think all of this is kind of kindergarten level pricing. I don't love it. No, our customers don't complain about it, but they don't love it either. What I want to get to is contingent pricing or bounty pricing, where I win as I find bounty for you. Just like Osama bin Laden, right? Like if I find Osama for you, you pay me a buttload of money, please.
Revenue share.
Right? Yeah. Revenue share, not so sure about that word. I'm using the word bounty as fairly purposefully here because bounty is less precise. It allows you to play on both sides of the coin. In our world, a lot of it is a cost saving or a cost avoidance. Now, what is the revenue line of that? It's impossible to tell. These things were probabilistic. They were not guaranteed to occur. It's hard to model two scenarios, one with Nplan, one without Nplan in it, because these are all future-based events to occur, right? Nonetheless, there's an energy company we work with. They were planning on building a project in Australia where the project team said, we're going to build it this way. We're going to start the facility up with starting up the diesel generators, and then we'll start the facility that way. And then Nplan said, oh, if you do it that way, $100 million loss on your table. Then the team were like, oh, okay, we have a better idea. Let's energize the substation first, and then we'll start it that way. Then we're like, ooh, $30 million loss if you do it that way. Nplan came and said, actually, there's a third option that none of you guys have even thought about yet. Let's do it this way, right? Start with steam power inside here. And the team were like, that's weird, but it kind of makes sense. Let's look at it. If you do it this way, you're sitting on a 50 million gain, right? You'll gain 50 million back from the acceleration you get on this project. You've just gone from minus 100 to plus 50 in that. That's bounty. Like, I found that for you. I gave you that information. That gave you 50 million bucks back into your bank account. I should be remunerated for that in some fair way, right? I'm not saying I get a large chunk of that number, but even 0.1% of that number, I'll be happy with. And if I can do that at scale for hundreds of projects simultaneously, then you're really rocking and rolling, right? The customer is happy because the customer has now got something that they would have never had unless we existed.
I guess the challenge in that model, or just thinking out loud, might be, what do you set as that baseline?
It is hard. There is a reason it's not yet live. It's exactly...
But intentionally, it sounds like it's directionally in line with how your customers think about value. How would I have done it without Nplan?
Yeah, correct. It's hard, but not impossible. And I already have a small group of customers that are willing to test it with us, right? They're like, I think we're comfortable with what Nplan is and how it works. If we can juice this machine harder, all for the gain, right? Everyone gains.
What if we could cast our mind forward 10 years into the future? What does the world look like if Nplan is as phenomenally successful as it could be?
The first is the call it like easy to recognize thing that hopefully my little daughter will be able to say is true, is the critical infrastructure we needed to build for the world got built, right? Like, that's ultimately what has to happen. Shame on me if that doesn't become a reality and we're still hamstrung in these decisions at the top level. In the industry, that feeling will be a bit, that will also be true, but there'll be a different feeling or a different observation in 10 years' time. The first is there is now a de facto standard for measuring, quantifying, and understanding risk, and that is Nplan. We have it in our board pack. Every time we send out a board pack, we always put this reminder to all board members of Nplan. This is what it will feel like when Nplan is successful. And one of them says, Nplan is the de facto standard. Like, you are stupid to not use Nplan on your project. Just like you're stupid for a bank to not do a credit check before giving out a mortgage, right?
Sure.
Or a credit card. Like, no bank in the world does it today. But back in the day, it'd be like, oh, how do you feel that Joe is when you go meet the bank manager in the branch? That's what construction is still like today. Right? How do you feel when you're with someone? And data doesn't play much into that. So that those two things will be true, right? Like, the critical infrastructure of the world will be there when we need it. And that will have massive effects across society. And two is when, for the people in the industry, there's a recognized standard that they all believe in, can trust, and it's part of the DNA of the infrastructure.
If you weren't building Nplan, and I gave you $10 million today, what would you be working on?
I genuinely have I'm in a personal crisis in that my entire identity is wrapped into Nplan. I genuinely cannot think of anything better I should be doing with my life. Maybe if I'm 60 and you ask me the same question again, I'd probably pick a beach or something, buy a beach, and live on the beach with the 10 million. But I'm definitely not 60. I've still got enough. I can still pack a punch to keep going at this problem.
Last question from me, Dev, and this has been fantastic. So thanks for being, so clear and so open in how you've built Nplan. My question is this: if we fast forward, let's say 30 or 40 years, and you and I are sat next to each other on the proverbial rocking chair, let's say, and we look up and you could see the stars, and I turn to you and I say, Dev, what was it all for?
There'd be two answers. The first is for my daughter, right? Like, leave her with the kind of inspiration that she should go forward into the world and do something meaningful. Don't just become a cog in a machine. Like, look, this is how I did it, and not expecting you to do the same, but I'm giving you an inspiration to do the same. That would be one. And the second would be for the industry that I love and care and fight for, right? Like, I did it because, man, there's so many people like me that went to hospital out of stress. Like, I was hospitalized out of workplace stress, trying to deliver large projects. It is an absolutely mind-bogglingly complex, thankless, impossible job to do today. And I feel for every single person out there that has to do that job. It's crazy that we still expect people to succeed in these jobs, in these roles, right? And the stress is, in my case, at one point it became insurmountable, right? And I know that is also the case for many other people, like the mental health that punches that you take trying to deliver these critical infrastructure projects for the world is not to reckon with. So it's for them, right? Like, do something that helps the people that you care about.
Dev, this has been so much fun. Thanks for coming on.
Not at all. Glad to be here, man.